let the music go.
Now hit it. Okay, so we're going to start in the Jewish tradition. We usually start off the meal with some blessings, so we're going to do that. And then there will be some short words from the Justice of the Peace who married us, since none of you have met her yet.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam chamotzi lechem min haaretz.
I see this is not only something, but an obsession.
Oh, here she is. I wanted to introduce everyone. As you know from the wedding, first of all, thank you for all being here. Forgot that. But Justice Judy actually is someone we met when we were up here picking out the place for the wedding, and she's a Justice of the Peace here in Cape Cod, and she married us earlier in our room for the legal portion of the ceremony, and she told us a really great story while we were up in our room about the history of this place, and I think her story really kind of communicates why we chose to have our wedding here and why we asked you all to come this way to join us. So I'd like her to retell it again and share it with you because I think it's a great story. So, Judy?
Yes. Good afternoon. I want to start with a quick toast. May the salt grasses and the seagulls' calling tune bring many a blessing to our Cape Cod grooms. May their love enfold them like Cape Cod Harbor, and may their kisses be as plentiful as our sands, and may their love live on forever, blessed by these province lands. Now, the important thing I was telling them about this spot, we have a beautiful inn here, don't we, for those who've stayed? Get ready for another chair in a minute. Because it's a very special story. The land shape, as you all know, for Cape Cod is shaped like an arm. And we're right up on the very tip here at Land's End Inn. And off the tip is Race Point. And I want to take you back in history, almost 400 years. 10 more years, it'll be 400-year mark. In 1620, when the Pilgrims came across, you might think, what does that have to do with the wedding today, right? It's ancient history. But actually, it's very living history. When they came across, they came from England over. It took them 67 days. And the ship is rather small if you've seen the replica in Plymouth, the Mayflower too. And there's 102 passengers on board. A third were the religious separatists that we hear of often in school, looking for religious freedom. One other third was ship's crew. And the other third we rarely hear about, but I think are extremely important. And they were indentured servants, mainly men. All men, actually. And they had signed contract with investors to give 5 to 7 years of their lives to pay for the voyage over. And their contract read they were to start a plantation in the northern part of Virginia on the Hudson River. So it'd be modern-day New York City is where they were supposed to be going. And it was the ship's captain's job to take them there. Well, when he came across, he knew immediately he was at Cape Cod because a cartographer named Gosnold had mapped that 10 years prior, around 1610. And as he turned the ship south to head for the Hudson River, he noticed the shoals off Race Point, which are very deep and then very shallow, real quickly changing. So we've had a lot of shipwrecks out here, and the captain realized how dangerous it was, and it was his boat. So he turned the ship around and he wrote in the log, "We're returning to Cape Cod because we're low on victuals, especially beer." Man, woman, and child, 2 gallons per day they had been allotted, and they were getting low. So they turned into the Cape, and they parked directly right here, right where we are. If you look right out here, you'll notice real light blue shallows, and just beyond that are the deeper blue, and they would have parked in the deeper blue because their hull would have been deeper. 67 days, 102 people, no one got off the ship because there was tremendous angst amongst the passengers. The indentured servants had not been treated as equals on board. They had been looked down on by the families because they were a bit rougher around the edges, maybe cursed, drank quite a bit of that beer, and the separatists kind of tended to protect their families from these guys. But these guys meant survival when they landed. Those that were different from them meant survival. And the families were smart enough to realize that, seeing they landed here in November, which is our cold months here. And they had to quickly build shelter. And you have to picture Provincetown not like it is now, but it was really a barren wilderness. The shore was covered with 4 to 5 foot diameter trees, and you could barely fit a man between them. There was no politics here, no churches, no houses, no government. It was, for them, a barren wilderness. The gentlemen that were the indentured servants said, as soon as we hit land, seeing the captain's not willing to take us to the Hudson, we're leaving, we're walking. We're going to walk to the Hudson and start the plantation so we can work off the indenture. Well, of course, the families didn't want them to do that. They needed their protection. They needed them to help build houses. All of a sudden, these people that were cast aside were very needed. So the first democratic document in the United States was written, and that's called the Mayflower Compact. And I'm just going to very much abbreviate it for you. But it said, for the common good of all, no one will be treated as second-class citizens. We all have rights for any laws or government that is formed. And this is all for the common good of all. So the Goodrich decision came before the Supreme Court here, and that's the decision that allows same-sex marriages. And we've all heard all the negatives on radio and TV, all the arguments why it should not be allowed. And Massachusetts Supreme Court heard all those arguments. There's not one, I'm sure, that wasn't touched on. But their decision came down that based on our Constitution, for the common good of all, so as to not create second-class citizens, same-sex marriages would be allowed. So I think those pilgrims that trod on these shores almost 400 years ago are no different than the men that trod it today and the women. And I certainly honor Adam and Nathan and their decision. I'm proud of Massachusetts. I welcome you to Cape Cod and Provincetown and Land's End Inn. Hope you enjoy your visit, and I think they deserve another toast.
Here, here.